Hello, everyone. This week's video, Dvar Torah, is sponsored by Jen and Dror Michelson in honor of the birth of their granddaughter, Maya Willow. And we thank Jen and Dror. We wish you Mazel Tov, Jen and Dror, and Mazel Tov as well to Chloe and Jonathan, and to the very special great-grandmother of the baby, Joyce Kasowski. So Mazel Tov, and thank you very much. I'm sure, like many of you, last Motzei Shabbos, almost immediately as soon as Shabbos was done and I had turned on my phone, I immediately became aware of the tragic and untimely passing of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, Harav Yaakov Zvi ben David Aryeh, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. And I had an immediate, visceral, personal, emotional reaction. I was felt, there's an expression, I don't know if I've ever really felt it before, sort of a punch in the stomach. And all of my teachers who I learned with directly, they're all, thank God, living, alive, and well, continuing to teach. And other than when I experienced the passing of someone within my family's orbit, I had never felt such an experience, certainly never felt a sense of loss, personally, emotionally, regarding the passing of someone who I did not know on any personal, individual level. I read Rabbi Sachs's books. I heard him speak a handful of times. I had a couple very, very brief conversations with him, but did not know him really on any personal level. And the whole world, to some degree, this week recognized and mourned his loss. And I know there are many people in our community that this was a very sad event for them. And so I'd like to just dedicate this week's Dvar Torah, just a relatively short amount of time. Obviously cannot capture his greatness, but something that should be dedicated to his memory and in his honor. The current chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, Rabbi Ephraim Mervis, in his hesped for Rabbi Sachs, focused on a pasuk in this week's Parsha, an incredibly appropriate pasuk, one very much well chosen. When Avraham is trying to buy the Maras HaMachpelah, the place to bury his beloved wife Sarah, he approaches Bnei Ches, the Hittites, the Canaanites, not believers and followers in the ways of Avraham, and he asks them, is there a way for me to bury my wife Sarah? And they tell him, Shema'enu Adoni, oh listen, our master, my master. Nisi Elokim ata b'sochenu, you are a prince of God amongst us, certainly take whatever place you want. And as Rabbi Mervis pointed out, these are the Hittites. These are not the students of Avram. These are not members of his household, but it's clear that Avraham, by his actions, by his demeanor, by his personality, he was recognized as a Nasi Elokim, as a prince of God amongst all believers and non-believers. And that is exactly what Rabbi Sachs was. He was a Nasi Elokim, a prince of God, recognized as such by the Jewish people and those beyond the Jewish people. You can watch any of the many YouTube videos of lectures, of talks, of discussions with Rabbi Sachs, and there's so many that are so meaningful, so incredible, and you can just look at the comments, especially after his passing. You see people, Jews, non-Jews, people of all religions, people of no religions, who felt connected, who were inspired, who saw greatness in Rabbi Sachs. One personal experience that I had with this, seeing how others saw Rabbi Sachs 5 years ago. Rabbi Sachs was in Boston, and there was a talk organized by the JCRC for clergy in the greater Boston area. And it was Rabbi Sachs and about 40 or so, as I recall, clergy. Maybe there were a handful of rabbis, and I appreciate the JCRC included me. And the overwhelming majority were priests and pastors, Christian leaders. Maybe there were a few Muslim leaders. And I remember watching them. And about half of them, honestly, it seemed like I never heard of Rabbi Sachs before. This is 5 years ago. He has even greater spread now. But half of them, let's say 20 or so, again, priests, pastors, other religious thinkers of the greater Boston area, they clearly knew him. They clearly had read his books, and you could see they related to him. They asked him questions with incredible reverence. Rabbi Sachs, the way I remember, they were talking in third person. How does Rabbi Sachs understand this idea? How would you explain this? And it was incredible. It was incredible for me to see how others of other religions saw him. The Navi Shayahu refers to Jewish people as an or lagoyim, a light unto the nations. And we would say that over and over, but it's really kind of this theoretical idea. They are words, but we can't really see, can't really envision what that would mean, how that would work. But with Rabbi Sachs, we saw what some of that prophetic vision meant. We saw he was in Or Lagoyim. That is how the nations of the world themselves, would describe Rabbi Sachs, a light for the world. The Medrash, on the pasuk that we quoted, when the Hittites referred to Avraham as Nasi Elokim, they say that some of the Hittites did not mean that he is a prince of God, but he's a Nasi hyphen Elohim. He is a God prince, a prince God. Echoing a Medrash we quoted 2 weeks ago, Amru, they said to him, Maloch, Melech ata aleinu, be a king for us, Nasi ata aleinu, you are a prince for us, Elokim ata aleinu, you are a God for us, be our God. Amr Lahem, and Avram said to them, Al yachsar ha'olam malko, Val yachsar olam eluko. God, the world does not lack a king, the world does not lack a God. It was not about him. Avram led a life to teach others, to point others to something greater. There are other, so to speak, spiritual celebrities in general culture, pop culture of today. And at least some of them, some of these spiritual gurus, self-help book authors, some of them, you get the sense that it's about them. They are the spiritual celebrity. They are, and it could be they are very wise, astute, deep people, but it is about orbiting around them. With Rabbi Sachs, there was some amount of celebrity to him because he was famous throughout the world, but it was not about him. He meant to teach people about values, morality, the ways of the Torah, and about God. Rabbi Sachs wanted to teach the world that believing in God, religion, is important. That is a counter-cultural idea, like Avram, who was an iconoclast. Like Avraham, Rabbi Sachs was willing to engage and to debate, to spar in our current day terms with atheists, agnostics, people who do not believe. There's a YouTube video in which he debates, he engages the very famous scientist, biologist, English scientist, Richard Dawkins, who is one of the quote-unquote new atheists, who is an atheist and who tries to spread and teach such beliefs. Richard Dawkins is obviously a very bright person as well. And Rabbi Sachs and Professor Dawkins, they debated, they spoke, they each presented their worldviews, how they see the world, how they live their lives. And that was a brave thing. At one point, Professor Dawkins, he turns to Rabbi Sachs, he calls him Jonathan, and he says, Jonathan, let me ask you, do you really believe the whole story with the Jews in Egypt and the Exodus? You know, come on, Jonathan, I know you went to university. You clearly are a bright person. You're well-read. You're a deep thinker. Do you really believe these childish stories? And Rabbi Sachs, immediately, you can watch it without a beat, responds, well, yes, of course, absolutely. There are some people who think that to believe in God and to believe in the Bible is childish. It is for the uneducated. It is for those who cannot think deeply or critically, analytically. Rabbi Sachs belied such a claim. He made it quite clear to everyone that a person can be brilliant, a person can be cultured, a person can be well-read, a person can be a deep thinker and believe in God, believe in the Torah. We should never think that the Torah is unsophisticated, is not deep, is simple, superficial. If we are comparing Rabbi Sachs to Avraham, ultimately Avraham's mission, when he is called in the beginning of the Parshas Lech Lecha, is V'niverchuvacha kol mishpachos ha'adama, that through Avraham, all of the families of the land would be blessed. Avraham is Av Hamon Goyim. He is meant to be a father, a teacher, a leader, a model for many nations. Avraham establishes the Jewish people, and he's meant to be a model for many nations. And that is what Rabbi Sachs did, like Avraham, teaching monotheism, morality, justice, kindness. Rabbi Sachs engaged Jew and non-Jew alike, and it was not to convert every non-Jew to be a Jew. It was to elevate them in who they were, to bring them closer to God, to holiness, to morality, to purpose in life. And many non-Jewish people felt that and were inspired and were brought closer to God, were brought closer to the concept of holiness, of having a purpose in life, of justice and kindness. If Rabbi Sachs is a glimpse into the phrase Or Lagoyim, as I think of it, Rabbi Sachs also offers us a window to imagine, listen to this, how Mashiach will come. Again, Mashiach is an idea. It's hard for us to really believe it or understand it, to envision it. How will it happen? The vision of the prophets is in the days of Mashiach, there still will be all the nations of the world. The other nations will not be destroyed, other than the extremely wicked ones. The other nations of the world will not convert necessarily, but there will be a harmonious, peaceful family of nations with the Jewish people and other nations. But the other nations will come to recognize Israel, the Torah, God. It is quite remarkable to reflect on what Rabbi Sachs did, what he accomplished, where he spoke, where he taught, throughout the Jewish community, in universities, at the Vatican, to believer, to non-believer. And he had much more that he could have done. He was 71 and still in the prime of his spiritual career. But if we could imagine, let's say there was a world with not just one, with 10 Rabbi Sachses. Each one spoke a slightly different language. Each one had a slightly different perspective. You can see how the whole world can be moved. The whole world could be brought closer to what we refer to as Yemos HaMashiach, the ideal perfected world. But we do not have 10 Rabbi Sachses. Now we do not even have one. What he accomplished, how he did it, was not just once in a generation. It was once in many generations for what one individual can do. But we can all continue his vision to lead Jewish Torah lives that are thoughtful, that are learned, that are compassionate, as believing Jews. And if we do, then in our own realm of activity with all the people that we interact, we can sanctify Hashem's name. We can bring the world closer to its perfected state. We can continue to walk in the ways of the teachings of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha. Good Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom.